government's control, targeting American interests, threatening minorities, stealing vital international aid meant to help Iraq recover from the scourge of ISIS. And of all Iran's meddling, it's only added fuel to an unprecedented humanitarian crisis across the region. In Syria, more than 5.7 million people have been forced to flee from their home. In Yemen, more than 1 million people have contracted cholera, and millions more lack access to clean water. Hunger is so widespread that every 10 minutes a child dies an entirely preventable death. And in Iraq, even though the ISIS caliphate has been decimated, more than 1.8 million Iraqis still haven't returned to their homes. The plight of the oppressed in the Middle East and the threat posed by their oppressors has spurred the United States to action. Thanks to the courage of our armed forces, more than 5 million people are now free from the grip of ISIS. And with the generosity of the American people, the United States has provided more than $9 billion in humanitarian aid and civilian assistance to those affected by the multiple crises across the Middle East, more than any other nation on earth. The United States of America has been a force for good in the Middle East. But under the mullah's regime in Iran, for their people, it's been 40 years of corruption, 40 years of repression, 40 years of terror, and 40 years of failure. And for too long, America tried wishing away the dangers of a radical Islamism that's poisoning both of Islam's great Sunni and Shia streams, a radicalism that seeks to crush every form of dissent and divergence. Previous administrations' desire for peace at any price drove them to strike a devil's bargain with our common enemy, the enemy of our allies and partners in the Middle East. But since day one of this administration, President Trump promised to stand with the good people of Iran and stand up to their oppressors. And that's just what we've done. President Trump kept his word when he withdrew the United States of America from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. The so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action did not prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. It merely delayed the day when that vile regime would gain access to the world's deadliest weapons. And remarkably, the universal view of those who spoke last night at this very conference was that Iran has actually become more aggressive since the JCPOA was signed, not less. The United States reimposed sanctions that should never have been lifted in the first place. And we've launched a new campaign to prevent the regime from financing its trademark terror and destruction around the world. Since then, the UAE has canceled its imports of Iranian condensate. Bahrain is exposing the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps proxies active in its country and is working to stop Iran's illicit maritime activities in the region. And countries across the globe are working toward cutting Iranian oil imports to zero. But sadly, some of our leading European partners have not been nearly as cooperative. In fact, they've led the effort to create mechanisms to break up our sanctions. Just ago, Germany, France, and the United States announced the creation of a special financing mechanism designed to oversee a mirror image transaction that would replace sanctionable international payments between EU businesses and Iran. They call this scheme a special purpose vehicle. We call it an effort to break American sanctions against Iran's murderous revolutionary regime. It's an ill-advised step that will only strengthen Iran, weaken the EU, and create still more distance between Europe and the United States. Some argue that Iran is in technical compliance with the narrow terms of the deal, but compliance is not the issue. The deal is the issue. Today, America's economic sanctions on Iran are the toughest in history and will get tougher still unless and until Iran changes its dangerous and destabilizing behavior. As President Trump has said, there's been enough suffering, death, and destruction. Let it end now. The time has come for our European partners to stand with us and the Iranian people, to stand with our allies and friends in the region. The time has come for our European partners to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal and join with us as we bring the economic and diplomatic pressure necessary to give the Iranian people, the region, and the world the peace, security, and freedom they deserve. We must not let this opportunity slip from our hands. In June 2009, after the Iranian regime stole an election to maintain its grip on power, the previous administration refused to raise its voice when the Iranian people took to the streets in what came to be known as the Green Movement. It wasn't until the Congress acted that the United States declared its support for the Iranian people. As a member of Congress, it was my privilege to introduce a bipartisan resolution that passed overwhelmingly that showed the support of the American people. And only then did our administration follow. But soon the Ayatollahs and their henchmen used the cover of the world's timidity to murder, imprison, and terrify freedom-loving Iranians. The world missed an opportunity last time to confront the regime, but not this time. This time, all of us must stand strong. As Iran's economy continues to plummet, as the people of Iran take to the streets, freedom-loving nations must stand together to hold the Iranian regime accountable for the evil and violence it's inflicted on its people, on the region, and the wider world. So to all of you gathered here who share this vision for peace and security across the Middle East, I make you a promise. On behalf of the President of the United States and the American people, if you stand with us in this noble cause, we will stand with you. Together, we will embrace a shared future, building on the best traditions of the past. It's remarkable to think that nearly 4,000 years ago, a man was called to leave his home in the Ur of the Chaldeans and make a long journey north. He wore no crown. He commanded no armies. He performed no miracles. He delivered no prophecies. Yet to him was promised in those ancient words descendants as numerous as the stars of the sky. Today, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, more than half of the population of the earth, and nearly all the people of the Middle East claim Abraham as their forefather in faith. And so he is. And as we gather at this historic conference, I believe on that foundation of that Abrahamic tradition, we can find a firm foundation for a brighter future for all the peoples and all the faiths of the Middle East. And it doesn't just simply have to be a part of our imagination. It's actually happening even as we speak. We need look no further than the old city of Jerusalem as an example of what could be true for the region as a whole. There we see the followers of the three great religions in constant contact with one another. We see each faith come to life in new and renewed ways every day. At Haram el-Sharif, we see young Muslims, heads bowed in prayer. At the Church of the Sepulchre, we see a Christian child receiving the rite of baptism. And at the Western Wall, we see a young Jewish boy being bar mitzvah. What we see there, we can achieve and live all across the Middle East. That's the vision that President Trump has. And that's the hope and aspiration of peace-loving people in our nation and around the world. So it's an honor to be with all of you today. To all of your excellencies who are gathered here. And to our host country, Poland, we say thanks. Thank you all again for being here. And to all who ever doubt whether peace could at last come to the Middle East, I think we would do well to look to a promise that was made to that man I referred to, who made that journey so many centuries ago. It was a promise in those ancient words that I will surely bless you. I believe with all my heart. We can claim that blessing anew for all the people of this region and the world, for ourselves and our posterity, if we claim it with faith and we claim it together. I believe God will surely bless us with peace. So let us begin. Thank you, and God bless you.
We are doing it in cooperation with your governments, with many European countries, and with the US government as well, to help all those in need, to help them survive. When inevitably these people are forced to flee, their humanitarian needs must be met. We need to support the frontline states such as Turkey or Lebanon. It is our duty to help these countries in the overall goal of humanitarian assistance. That goal being increasing the self-reliance of refugees by providing safe shelter, access to medical assistance, access to education, access to labor market. In providing urgent care in neighboring countries, let us not deflect our attention from the country of origin, where the long-term solution lies. We must seek to ensure that people are not forced to flee their homes in the first place. Because the response must not be focused on providing food and shelter only, in the words of Peter Maurer, president of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, all humanitarian work has a final goal, and that goal is peace, as it was emphasized by Vice President Pence just a couple of minutes ago. I have spoken to President Maurer, and I told him what I want to tell you today as well. Poland is committed to play its role in addressing refugee challenges, humanitarian challenges, but most of all, peace challenges in the Middle East. To avoid conflicts that result in refugee and humanitarian crisis, we must ensure stability and sustainability in the region. And we must employ politics when we talk about this, because peace is, in the end, a political goal. That is why we must make sure that the means we use to address these challenges should always be part of a wider strategy. Because we should not just deal with the current situation and react to it, but rather prevent its repetition in the future. So that the next generations can be free from fear, they can survive without external aid, and they can create a safe and sustainable environment for their families and children. Poland has always underscored the importance of development aid as a basis of a long-term solution, both for Middle East and other regions such as Northern Africa. We are involved in many programs to establish foundations for prosperous future, such as European Resilience Initiative by the European Investment Bank, where we have contributed 50 million euro, biggest share for any EU member state. This money will help creating jobs and businesses for people in the Middle East and North Africa, promote peace, provide for cleaner water, improve public transport and education facilities. They will help in creating a basis for prosperous future in the region. This is the way that is necessary to adopt if we have a long-term solution in mind. Not just humanitarian aid, not just providing basic supplies for refugees. This is also hugely important, but this is not enough. I hope that this ministerial conference will have two main results. First, that it will bring together our governments even if we do not agree on all things, and it will be a place of open debate and exchange of arguments for peace in the region. But most of all, I hope that it will be just the beginning, that it will result in developing something more than just a nice memory from snowy Warsaw. I hope that the working groups established as a result of this conference that will be at will also that approach in mind. The main goal of this conference is third in its title: future of peace and security and for stabilization in the region. This approach is essential. And I hope that despite all our differences, it is the one that we all share. Thank you very much for being here with us in Warsaw, and thank you for your attention.
do wojny, a nie przygotowanie do